Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. Pakistan's former Foreign Minister Mr. Butto Zardari has urged people of India to avoid falling prey to disinformation and war-mongering. In an interview with Indian journalist, he rejected Indian claims of Pakistan's involvement in terrorism. Butto Zardari further added that Pakistan has suffered immense toll because of terrorism and he himself is a victim of terrorism. Butto reiterated Pakistan's offer of a neutral, transparent and a credible investigation into Pahalgam incident. Butto has also emphasized collective efforts between Pakistan and India to combat the menace of terrorism and also the resolution of all the outstanding issues between the two countries through dialogue. Butto Zardari also highlighted the Indian state sponsorship of terrorism. He has also reiterated Pakistan's desire for peace, saying, let me quote, "We want peace, we can talk together and sort out all our issues," unquote. It is pertinent to mention over here that India blamed Pakistan without any sort of a proof or a credible investigation into Pahalgam incident, on the pretext of which it resorted to aggression against Pakistan's sovereignty and territorial integrity, which was responded to befittingly by Pakistan, not only in the battlefield but also on the diplomatic front. And there is at the same time a plethora of evidence of Indian authorities, particularly under Bharatiya Janata Party since 2014, using terrorism as the state policy. Let me quickly bring in our esteemed panel of guests who are joining both in the studio as well as online to talk about this particular interview and also Indian state policy of using terrorism, not here in Pakistan only, but also in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and also in other parts of the world. In the studio, we are honored to be joined by Mr. Siddique Humayun. He is Director Communications, Islamabad Policy Research Institute. Mr. Humayun, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. On the video link at the same time, we are honored to be joined by Mr. Baloch. He is former ambassador. Mr. Baloch, thank you very much for your time also, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Later on in the show, we'll be joined by another participant. As he joins in, I'll be introducing him as well. Mr. Humayun, specifically talking about this interview overall, we have seen that war-mongering, especially when it comes to the attitude and approach of Indian media, especially during that particular standoff that happened because of Indian aggression. How important are such interviews when it comes to Pakistani leadership talking to the foreign media, and especially when it comes to Indian media in particular?
Well, thank you. I think it's very important to understand that the media in India is jingoistic. It thrives on yellow journalism. We've seen it when the war was happening, when the conflict was going on, how they behaved. We've seen it post-conflict as well, and with Mr. Butto Zardari's recent interview with Karan Thapar, we see that they try to sensationalize things. They're generally not based on facts, mostly opinions, and that kind of leads, India being such a populous country, it leads over 1 billion people into some sort of fantasy world where they would like to believe something what their media tells them. I think it's very important that we and Indians especially, they try to search for the truth instead of just believing what their media is telling them. Because as we'll talk about this interview further as well, but as Mr. Butto Zardari also said that Indian media has been feeding them all of this information, whereas in the real world, Pakistan has objectively asked India that we're happy to take part in any international neutral inquiry, but nobody talks about that in India. And my only concern, one of the bigger questions that we have in this case in Pahalgam attack is that how can you blame another sovereign state minutes after the attack? You have to gather some intelligence, you have to sit down, you have to work at it, but suddenly the government decides to blame Pakistan, and the whole media, it's like they've been given a chit from certain quarters that this is what you need to talk about, and they start talking about it without figuring out what's the ground reality. So it's very important to fight disinformation, misinformation. It is a problem on both sides of the border to a certain extent, but it is clearly very damaging when it comes to India. because facts seem to be blurred. They are not taken into consideration. And then when they're bigger journalists, Karan Thapar is a very famous journalist of India. When he comes and sits on, on television and questions our people, like our former foreign minister, and they get this sort of a factual response, you see them flaring up. And I think that's what it is. We on our side should also maintain, I would say, neutrality, and which we have. But Indian journalists and Indian media needs to do that as well.
Right. Mr. J.R. Baloch, what's your understanding when we talk about the entire world knows for a fact that how Indian authorities had been involved in a massive disinformation campaign to malign Pakistan internationally, and especially when in the light of this recent standoff between Pakistan and India post Pahalgam, the kind of warmongering that we witnessed as far as Indian media's approach is concerned, do you think such type of interviews on the part of the Pakistani authorities talking to Indian journalists and Indian media outlets can actually work as an antidote to that false narrative Bharatiya Janata Party has been trying to inculcate into the minds of its general populace?
Thank you. I think, first of all, let me comment on Mr. Karan. Mr. Karan is generally one of the so-called objective journalists, but he has a peculiar way of being very aggressive, very, very intimidating. And that's one of the strategies these old-timers use. Now, the strategies have changed. The interviews are not meant to have one up. But when interview becomes one-upmanship show, this is where the actual dialogue becomes a sort of skirmish. That is what I think Mr. Bilawal Bhutto was trying to tell Mr. Karan. But I think, having said that, I must say that Mr. Bilawal Bhutto stood his ground. He was firm. He was unintimidated. That is the biggest challenge. In fact, a leader has it, and he passed that, I think, test. And he tried to put all the facts in perspective. And he was trying to tell Mr. Karan that where from actually this terrorism, this evil, this scourge of terrorism which has spread all over the world. He referred to the Cold War era. He referred to the Mujahideen in Afghanistan and the same Mujahideen being hosted in White House and so on and so forth. And then, obviously, all other things, factors came in. But I think overall, I must say that this interview was an essential part of reestablishing dialogue. How the states, they actually, where the war begins. The war begins as a also teacher and students of international relations when the dialogue breaks down. The dialogue among the leaders, the dialogue among the media now in these times, but historically also, and most of all, the dialogue among the people. And this is a problem. And that breakage has been done as a part of the strategy of unfortunately, RSS BJP. I always put RSS first before the slash BJP, with a well thought out strategy to insulate and to capture the thought process of the Indian people. I always believe that there's a huge reservoir of common sense in this 1 billion plus people of India. After all, they are the inheritors of the legacy of coexistence, of secularism, of ahimsa, of Mr. Gandhi and other leaders that came into India. I always say that these are the people who have really stolen the actual India of these RSS, BJP people, stolen the spirit of India. But I hope that it is the temporary phase, it will come back. Now, what has to be done? I think this is good beginning. We must talk to the Indian people. I always say, we have to find ways to address the people of India. Tell them, take them out of the spell of this hatred and communalism. It is self-destructive. I always say that this, unfortunately, regime which is now in Delhi is not only sort of dangerous to Pakistan in the way of their adventurism, but it's a danger to the very development of India that they want to dream of. It's a danger to
This
to the
particular policy of
international
Bharatiya Janata
order.
Party is a danger to the development of its own public. Mr. G.R. Baloch, please stay with us. Number of other points from that very particular interview of Bilawal Bhutto Zardari. I'll come back to you. Mr. Siddique Humayun, when we talk about the bilateral relationship, especially vis-a-vis Pakistan and India, we know for a fact India had been involved in that massive disinformation campaign that was busted by EU Disinfo Lab as well. How bigger an impact and in what ways such a disinformation campaign, which is being undertaken under the auspices, under the supervision of the state authorities, does leave on the bilateral relationship with another country that is an immediate neighbor and also a nuclear-armed neighbor?
So, as you mentioned, the EU Disinfo Lab, we all saw that India was involved in a massive global disinformation campaign that spanned over 15 years and targeted, I think, 115 or 110 countries. This is dangerous. This is narrative building on their end. But what India and I think what Indian government especially needs to understand is that we Pakistanis have actually been on the sharper end of this fight. We have lost 92,000 lives. We are the ones who've gone through all of these massacres and these tragedies, and we're still going through them considerably. So I think narratives have a part to play, but when it's based on lies and falsehood, it will get exposed. So why did the world did not take India very seriously after the May incident? Because their argument, their narrative was not based on truth. You need to have some sort of truth to even build a propaganda. So nobody took them seriously because they were trying to base it on falsehood. And that's what they've been doing for many years now. And you see whatever happens in case of Canada, when they murdered somebody in Canada.
Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
Yes. The Sikh activist or the Sikh citizen of Canada, the whole Indian disinformation campaign started again, and they started spewing all sorts of falsehoods against Canada. So it's not just Pakistan. India does it with every country, and it's trying to spread its tentacles. I would rather say its dark shadow across the globe now with its insidious activities. And that's primarily because I would say, as Ambassador Saab was just saying, based on the RSS Hindutva ideology that India is so fascinated with for the past 15, 20 years. And there's this Hindu supremacist ideology that likes to portray itself as, the
I get your point. So you already mentioned this time around, after post-Pahalgam incident, the entire world didn't buy that very narrative of Indian side. Are there any lessons to be learned from this entire saga when it comes to Indian authorities and the Godi media from this particular sort of narrative building that they undertake? So
I think there is already some sort of a understanding within the Indian government and Indian media that what they've done, because we've seen a few of their senior anchors come on television, except what they did was very wrong. And they, calling Lahore a seaport, for example. So they actually came on television and apologized, a few of them, not all of them.
So is apology sufficient in such sort of scenarios where the stakes of two nuclear-armed neighbors, their considerable huge chunk of population is concerned, or does this entire saga also asks for accountability at the same time?
Apology is definitely not enough. There needs to be accountability. The people who spread this sort of misinformation and this propaganda and spewed this hatred towards Pakistan and Pakistanis, there should definitely be an accountability. But I think what Indian government and Indian and Godi media needs to learn is have some very hard lessons from this episode and try to change their behavior in the future. If they do that, then I think that would have been enough accountability for them as well. But I don't see that happening because that's what Indian media runs on, sensationalism. You have to do that. And I've been on many Indian channels before, and they actually tell you that, flare up as much as you want. that's what they want. They don't want to have a reasonable discussion. And we've seen that in this past May, and I think that will probably continue. What I personally believe is that India cannot blame Pakistan for all the shadows it casts on itself.
Especially when there is a long list of evidence of its involvement, use of terrorism as a state policy, not only here in Pakistan, but also
Across the globe now.
across the globe. Mr. G.R. Baloch, Pakistan's Prime Minister, Mr. Shehbaz Sharif, at that particular point in time, offered a neutral, transparent and a credible investigation into Pahalgam incident. To date, there hasn't been any sort of response from the Indian side, and that is what exactly has once again been highlighted by Mr. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari in this particular interview. Why didn't India agree to that particular offer of a transparent investigation?
First of all, I think let me say that when it comes to this misinformation, disinformation, there is this vital issue that is accountability. And that accountability has to start from the people of India. And in fact, the questions are being raised that they have put the entire South Asia at a stake, the peace of it, the security of it. So I think the accountability has to start, and that is where we heard the opposition leader, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, saying things that he said about Mr. Modi. So I think accountability, when somebody who accuses another party and runs away from a neutral party to verify it, to hold person responsible, to hold accountable the person who is, or the parties which are responsible, tells us all. So the problem is that when the entire edifice is based on a lie, on fiction, on deceit, on misleading the people and their minds just to control the votes. My God, what a narrow thing to just grab power, to stay in power. They can go to any extent. So I think, like as we all say, that lie has a shelf life. So I just want to tell them and want to tell our audience in India especially, the shelf life of all the lies of India are no more. They are all expired. Pakistan, a center of terrorism, all gone. Pakistan, isolated diplomatically, expired. Pakistan is sponsoring Kashmir, all gone. Pakistan, involved in other matters, gone, because we were totally verified by FATF. In fact, FATF is the mechanism internationally after the UN Security Council resolution and principles against the counterterrorism, which is a very very tough test to pass for any country. I'm pretty sure if India today is put through those tests of FATF, definitely it will not pass. The only thing is that there is
a number of very important points that you have highlighted, Mr. G.R. Baloch. First of all, that accountability part, it has to come from the people from within India. As far as the international law is concerned, is there any sort of a chalked out mechanism that pertains to this particular aspect also when it comes to the interstate relations?
Definitely, there is a UN Security Council resolution, I think 1376 or 73. I'm forgetting the exact name, but there is one Security Council resolution where using terrorism as a tool, as a tool of policy, state policy, is totally prohibited. And those states where they use it, they have to be held responsible. So I would say that if really a investigation, which will definitely be carried out by the Canadian government, by the US government, the two cases which are in the court of law. And already a lot of the linkages have been established with the government officials of India. So I think a time will come when India will really be held responsible and accountable for all they have been doing in the world in Pakistan. You see, in Pakistan, what else? Conversion, what else? What more evidence the world needs? What more evidence the people of India need that what their country is, their government is doing with their resources, what they are doing with their neighbors, how they are destroying the peace of a wonderful South Asia. I mean, where are the dreams of SARC? Where are the dreams of a prosperous South Asia? The only regional configuration which is kind of totally dominant is South Asia, where you see nothing but wrong, like sickening narratives and media. I think we have to now start afresh, as also Mr. Bilawalan has said, that we how long more they want their people and people of South Asia to live in the past. Let's leave the past as to be the past. Let's make a new beginning. Let's come up and dream of a terrorism-free South Asia, a South Asia which is prosperous. And
Terrorism-free South Asia. A very important point that is linked to that one also, which has been mentioned by Bilawal Bhutto Zardari in that particular interview. I'll come back to you, Mr. G.R. Baloch. Mr. Humayun, when we talk about the accountability of the people who have been involved in disinformation campaign, is there any sort of a mechanism already chalked out at the international level when specifically it comes to addressing issues of that sort in interstate relations?
I think there are libel laws, there are journalism, media laws across the world, but internationally to force a state to take action, I don't think that is a feasible way. What India needs to do here is actually use its own media laws and be sincere towards itself. That fine, what India needs to understand is that you cannot claim a moral high ground while standing on a mountain of lies. So if that accountability needs to come, it needs to come from within. And the Indian government and the Indian people need to understand that, okay, fine, this is something that we've done, and this has caused us a global embarrassment. This is not just embarrassing; it is also factually incorrect. So that until and unless that sort of thinking emerges within India, and not just in the Indian people, but in the Indian media and the Indian government, I don't see any repercussions for this sort of jingoistic journalism that happens across India. And you see, when it comes to terrorism, and as Ambassador Saab was also just saying, India has obviously it has its own issues going on within the country as well, from Andhra Pradesh to all the way north to Arunachal Pradesh. The whole of the eastern side of India is actually in a grip of this sort of separatist movements and trying to wrest their control out of the Hindutva ideologies that they've been imposed upon. So I think accountability will not happen. And it cannot happen until unless it comes from within. And I'll give you an example of our own media that when we started many years ago, some of our channels independently made our own ethics. This is how we're going to report news. This is how we're going to cover. This is how we're going to make sure that what we're talking about is factually correct. And this was not imposed upon us. Obviously, eventually down the line, that also happens. But what we did was independently, as media houses and media organizations and channels and newspapers, we sat together, all the editors and all the anchors and all the media personnel, and we decided this is what ethical journalism is, and this is what we're going to do. It does not matter whether it gains us ratings or not. And I think that that sort of accountability or that sort of understanding has not yet developed in India.
Right. So going back to that particular point, when Bilawal Bhutto Zardari has highlighted the efforts and endeavors which have been put over the years by Pakistan when it comes to combating the menace of terrorism, not only in this interview, we have also seen in the recent past there has been praise from the international community, particularly when we talk about the US President, Mr. Donald Trump, also praising counterterrorism efforts of Pakistan. The numbers that you've already shared with our viewers, how big time Pakistan sacrificed on that particular front, as compared to what the track record we have witnessed on the Indian side, its involvement in state sponsorship of terrorism. I want your understanding how the world should ideally be behaving towards both of these countries, drawing the parallels on this particular front. The counterterrorism efforts, the sacrifices and endeavors and efforts of Pakistan as compared to the state policy of India using terrorism on foreign soils.
I think this is a very important question, and I'll go back to what I just said, that India likes to blame Pakistan for all of the shadows that it casts itself. It's been doing these sort of using terrorism as a state policy for many years now, many decades. And on our side of the border, as I said, we've lost so many lives, so many tragic incidents have happened, and almost everybody that you talk to in Pakistan has some sort of a story where they can link towards. Even Mr. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari is indirectly an effectee of terrorism, you know. And if you're not a direct or indirect effectee, you definitely know someone who is.
Yeah.
So that is a huge toll that Pakistan has suffered over the past 15, 20 years, and not just a few people, but a whole generation has been raised in that sort of an environment. And I think that is very unfair to people, to Pakistani citizens, to expect them to do more when on the other side of the border, there is no such sense of urgency, there is no such sense of accountability. I think the global order certainly realizes now more than it used to before that Pakistan is a victim rather than a sponsor of terrorism. And India would like to portray us otherwise, because obviously that's how they work. But I think the feeling across the globe is slightly tilting, slightly shifting, and people understand in the Western countries as well that we've suffered a lot. What I think Pakistan can do, and we've been doing a good job at it post Pahalgam attack, is that we've been pushing our narrative forward on the global stage. And I think that's Mr. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari and his team across who went there to European capitals and in the US. They did a good job, and this should continue. And I always say that to build a narrative of a country, you cannot and absolutely not be reactive. So Pahalgam has happened, Jafar Express has happened. You can give a reactive statement out that, you know, this is what has happened and Indian involvement is seen there. But for narrative to build, you need to be proactive. So you need to have a national communication strategy or a national narrative plan that is proactive, whether certain incidents of terrorism are happening or not. But Pakistan's narrative needs to go out consistently and hammer our stories. The story of Pakistan needs to be hammered in the global capitals and yelled at.
So what were those factors as far as Pakistan's diplomatic efforts are concerned post Pahalgam, post this particular standoff between Pakistan and India, as compared to what India did? Indians also sent out their delegations. So where do you draw the parallels if we try to compare the two efforts on both the parts?
So I think Pakistan was very successful, and the world realizes that. And one of the reasons is because, as I mentioned before, is that our narrative was based on truth, and theirs was based on falsehood, on propaganda, on what they would like to believe. And the factual evidence on ground was very different. And I think every sane mind, whether they were in Islamabad or in Washington or in Brussels, they realized that, okay, fine, a terrorist attack has happened inside, inside an illegally occupied state. But how can you blame a sovereign country 5 minutes after the attack without any factual evidence? And I think people understood that this time around. And Pakistan was very good at projecting that and raising those questions, those very important questions. And the fact that we actually volunteered to join any independent inquiry, neutral inquiry, and India backing out of it, that also showed to the world that who's to blame here. And
So the entire equation, to sum it up, how big a setback was it for India under Bharatiya Janata Party, led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in the Committee of Nations, as far as the very much talked about, as far as their perspective is concerned, their prestige in the Committee of Nations is concerned?
I think they have lost a lot of it. India has lost face. It has suffered a devastating blow in the field, in the air, and in the world of narratives. And that is why you see them slightly calmed down now. Otherwise, if it had been something different, a different outcome, India would have been harping about it a lot more. But you see that India is, slightly submissive in that sense these days, because it realizes that it has failed. It has not just failed to project Pakistan in a negative light, it has exposed itself to the world about its lies and about its, falsehoods that it likes to portray.
Also, was it a mistake or a miscalculation on the part of Indian authorities to give the command of this particular diplomatic endeavor in the hands of Shashi Tharoor, who had given those very remarks specifically about President Donald Trump, when he said that he had met 4 to 5 presidents of the United States, and there isn't any sort of an element of statesmanship as far as President Donald Trump is concerned?
I think Shashi Tharoor kind of, and for lack of a better word, I would say he sort of embarrassed himself on the stage as well. A lot of people were expecting better responses from him, and considering, and again, it's unfortunate, but people do like to think that because he speaks so well, because he's got a thesaurus in his hand, you know, and he can speak French, whatever he's going to say is going to be very well received. But again, if it is just propagating the Hindutva ideology or you know the Godi media, people can see through that. You know, we don't live in 1980s or 1970s anymore. People can pick up their phone and see who's saying what and who said what 10 years ago. So I think a lot of these bigger names exposed themselves as well, and unfortunately, Mr. Tharoor was one of them.
There was, by the way, a clarification on the part of Indian authorities as well. The kind of statement that he gave about President Donald Trump, he didn't do that while he was on the American soil. It was perhaps something which was from the past. Even in that case, if it was from the past, wouldn't that be considered a huge mistake?
Yes.
I mean, sending out a guy
Blunder.
who has already given such a statement, you're sending him for such a diplomatic mission.
So blunders, one blunder after the other, and I think the world saw that, and a huge win for Pakistan, I would say.
Right. We are honored to be joined by another participant, Lieutenant General retired Raza Muhammad Khan. He is senior analyst and former president of the National Defense University. General Raza Khan, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate it. We are specifically talking about this particular recent interview of Mr. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari to an Indian journalist, in which he has also talked of Pakistan most recently going through a rigorous FATF process with the international community endorsing Pakistan's actions against said terrorist groups. Now, when it comes to Pakistan going so rigorously through this FATF process, what about India? And how does FATF actually operate when it comes to a long list about a country under Bharatiya Janata Party that has been involved in state sponsorship of terrorism across the world?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think our quest for peace has been appreciated all over the world through our various delegations who visited a number of capitals and also the very positive, logical statements by the government of Pakistan at multiple levels. However, I think we must understand that our quest for peace, while it is being appreciated, it must never give the impression of any weakness or appeasement, particularly to the Indian government. I think Mr. Bilawal's interview to Karan Thapar was, I must say that it must have been very well received, by the youth of India. And I think it was a very balanced kind of an interview which projected Pakistan's perspective in a very, very logical manner. But I think we need to know that this kind of logic, unfortunately, is not understood by the BJP and the Hindutva followers who have always been using the philosophy of hate, the philosophy of division of India for political gains. Their hatred, particularly for Kashmiris, for Indian Muslims, and other Kashmiri and other minorities. And also, I think these kinds of interviews, they will be more beneficial if they are conducted or translated. I think in the language which is understood by the BJP voters, and I'm talking now of central India, and in the language they understand. Actually, we could translate these and through social media communicated to them that the message of hatred from India through their government should not be accepted by the people of India. That is a message, I think, which has been very well sort of communicated. But I think, unfortunately, the other side has been using, as I said earlier, hatred and division for gaining political opportunities. We saw this happening. They misused their armed forces in 2019 because there were general elections due in India. This time, elections in Bihar, a very important state for the BJP, are due within a few months' time. And that is why you saw again the use of Indian military for political reasons. That needs to be understood by the world and by the people of India. We believe, I think, that India has got nothing out of this aggression against Pakistan. I think India was humiliated through that aggression, and the people of India have understood that. But it is now up to them to make sure that they do not vote the same people into power who have been endangering the security of India, the well-being of its people a number of times. So we'll have to wait and see, what happens. Uh, Again, I think we need to understand that terrorism in Pakistan is state-sponsored by India, which has been accepted by the Indian Prime Minister and their national security advisors through their global doctrine. It is on record, and they take pride in sending terrorists to Pakistan, and they are misusing the territory of both Iran as well as Afghanistan for doing that, which is a matter of great concern, I think, for the governments of Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan. And I think we should collectively make an effort to make sure that India is not given the opportunity of using Afghanistan and Iran against Pakistan. And if
General Raza Khan, I seek your pardon for the interjection over here. When you already talked of Indian government using its military for the political gains. When we talk about specifically this statement that has come forth, the earlier statements which have come from Indian Defence Chief also, and also this recent statement by India's defence attaché in Indonesia, Indian Navy Captain Shiv Kumar, saying that Pakistan Air Force downed 6 Indian Air Force aircraft only because of the constraint given by political leadership to not attack the military establishment or their air defenses. Do we understand there is a huge difference of understanding and approach when it comes to the political as well as the military leadership within India, and they're not clearly on the same page?
Well, I think that military attaché is a very junior officer, and probably these are his view. And I think the Indian CDS is also on record, and he did not make a mention of this constraint by the political government. Of course, he said a number of other things as well, which probably were not, taken out of some context, and it was some kind of an academic lecture that he delivered. The fact of the matter is that the Indian armed forces were misused for political reasons, not in the past as well as now. And I think the earlier they understand this, the better it would be for the reputation of the Indian armed forces themselves and for the peace and stability of South Asia. They have a role in that. The Indian opposition has a role in that. They must play that role. And I believe that I think we have done enough to offer them a number of times, to come to for a dialogue with us. I think we should now wait for the Indian side to respond to all our offers. And once they respond, then I think at the political level, at the level of diplomacy, we could then start, it may be a small start, but we should start a dialogue with them only when they respond to the multiple sort of offers that we have been given them. Having said that, I think we must enhance our vigilance on the Pakistan-Afghan and Pakistan-Iran borders and now reassess our national action plans, provincial action plans, which must include kinetic actions against all terror safe havens, wherever they may be, particularly in Afghanistan, and if need be in Iran or elsewhere. If all other efforts fail, kinetic sort of actions by the armed forces will have to be undertaken, and probably that is the only language which India understands. And if Pakistan does that, I think India will have to accept the blame for it squarely.
So what about the possibility when Bilawal Bhutto Zardari talks of collective efforts, he has emphasized collective efforts between Pakistan and India when it comes to combating the menace of terrorism? The possibilities related to this one, sir?
Well, I think first of all, there have to be some confidence building measures, and because it was India who undertook, an aggression, so the first step must come from them. And once, India agrees to it, then I think in the past we have been building, there have been a number of confidence building measures, and then cooperations on terrorism could be undertaken. But unfortunately, in this case, the Indian state itself is involved in carrying out terrorism inside Pakistan. And we are all aware that whatever has happened in Pahalgam or before that, they were false flag operations, and also that some of it may have been a reaction or a blowback to the various actions of India to suppress the Kashmiri freedom fighters or other minorities inside India. And they must address the causes of whatever is happening in India as well, instead of just blaming Pakistan for whatever happens or does not happen in India.
Lt.Gen. Retired Raza Mohammad Khan, senior analyst, former president of the National Defence University. Thank you very much for being with us on this show tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Siddique, Humayun, together the collective efforts when it comes to counter-terrorism efforts between Pakistan and India, as talked about by Mr. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, what are the possibilities associated with that?
So Pakistan has always been open to dialogue, and we have, as General Khan was also mentioning, we've offered our hand many times. There have been track to diplomacies, there have been other overtures Pakistan has made. We've asked for a third party, conference as well, but it has always been met with a very cold shoulder from India. So there's so much we can do, there's so much we can offer. And I completely agree with General Khan when he was saying that India needs to, put its hand forward this time around, and we're happy to receive it. I'm sure there are saner voices inside India as well, and there are people, reasonable people, who actually would want to stop this sort of Hindutva ideology and this extremist policies of the Indian government. And if they do, and if they come to us, we'd be happy to. I'm sure we'd be happy to, take it a step forward. But I think the first step now needs to come from them.
So when we talk about the sentiment that would be prevalent as the Bihar elections are pretty much around the corner, so these false flag operations and this very bogey of terrorism has been used to malign Pakistan and get that very political dividend during the elections when it comes to Bharatiya Janata Party's approach. Now, after such a huge defeat in the battlefield and on the diplomatic front, do you think there would be a substantial change as far as the voter understanding towards Bharatiya Janata Party being in the government at the national level would be?
I think there would be, and there should be. I don't know how the Indian voters would vote, but seeing what they've seen, and having seen their media being exposed like that, their government being exposed like that, I think any sane voter would think twice voting for this sort of extremist ideology again. And this isn't something that's happened this May. This has been going on since PM Narendra Modi was a CM in Gujarat, butchering people, butchering Muslims, and we've seen it what he's been doing in Kashmir now, butchering Kashmiris, innocent civilians, and even this incident in May in Pakistan.
So do we understand that there seems to be a very lesser or a chance of any sort of a change coming from within? So does that call for any sort of a pressure that comes from the external side, so that there could be any sort of a semblance within the ranks of Indian authorities?
I think
or a term when we talk about in terms of that very communication, the language of communication, the term that has been used most recently in Israel and Iran war, the regime change. If it doesn't happen from within, from that very sentiment among the public, do we understand there has to be necessarily some sort of an external pressure to see or witness that?
I don't think regime change can happen externally. This change needs to come from within, because an external regime change will only make matters worse. It will make India more unstable and may cause even further problems for its neighbors. So that regime change, or this change towards a more saner or more moderate government, needs to come from within the people of India. And I think that can come if they actually start watching some other news other than their own.
Mr. Siddique Humayun, Director Communications at Islamabad Policy Research Institute, thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.